There's a moment that happens in many relationships, a quiet realization that arrives uninvited. You're sitting across from someone you've been with for months, maybe years, and you suddenly wonder, do I actually love this person? Or am I just afraid of losing them? It's a question that psychology suggests more people grapple with than we might imagine. The line between attachment and love is thinner than most realize, and crossing it without awareness shapes the entire trajectory of our emotional lives. This video explores why so many people confuse attachment with love, what drives this confusion, and how recognizing the difference changes everything. If you find value in understanding human behavior at a deeper level, consider subscribing. There's no pressure, just an invitation to explore these ideas together. Let's begin. To understand the confusion, we first need to clarify what we're actually talking about. Attachment, in psychological terms, refers to the emotional bond that forms between individuals, often rooted in a need for security, familiarity, or comfort. It's the invisible thread that keeps us connected to people, places, and even patterns of behavior. Research indicates that attachment develops early in life, primarily through our relationships with caregivers, and these early experiences create templates for how we connect with others throughout our lives. Love, on the other hand, is something different entirely. Psychology suggests that love involves genuine care for another person's well-being, a desire to see them thrive even when it doesn't directly benefit us, and a sense of appreciation for who they are rather than what they provide. Love is often described as expansive. It creates space for growth, autonomy, and authentic expression. It doesn't demand constant reassurance or cling out of fear. The crucial difference lies in the foundation. Attachment often grows from what we lack. It fills a void, soothes an anxiety, or recreates something familiar from our past. Love grows from abundance. It's not about filling emptiness, but about sharing fullness. Yet in practice, these two experiences can feel remarkably similar, especially in their early stages. Both create strong emotional responses. Both can keep us awake at night thinking about someone. Both feel important and real. This is where the confusion begins. Human beings are pattern-seeking creatures. From the moment we're born, our brains are working to understand how relationships function, what makes us safe, and how to get our needs met. Studies in developmental psychology show that children form attachment styles based on how consistently and sensitively their caregivers respond to them. A child whose needs are met with warmth and reliability typically develops a secure attachment style. But when care is inconsistent, dismissive, or overwhelming, other patterns emerge. These early experiences don't just fade away. They become the lens through which we view all future relationships. Someone who learned that love means anxiety, that connection requires constant vigilance, or that closeness inevitably leads to abandonment carries these beliefs into adulthood, often without conscious awareness. The patterns feel normal because they are normal for that individual. They're what the brain recognizes as how relationships work. What makes this particularly complex is the role of familiarity. The human brain is wired to find comfort in what it knows, even when what it knows isn't healthy. Research in behavioral psychology demonstrates that people often gravitate toward relationship dynamics that mirror their early experiences, not because these dynamics feel good, but because they feel recognizable. A person who grew up with an emotionally distant parent might find themselves repeatedly drawn to partners who are unavailable. It's not a conscious choice. It's the brain seeking out what it understands. Unmet needs create particularly strong attachment patterns. When someone grows up feeling unseen, unheard, or unvalued, they may develop an intense hunger for validation and connection. This hunger doesn't disappear in adulthood. Instead, it attaches itself to anyone who seems to offer what was missing. The intensity of this attachment can be mistaken for love, but it's actually the echo of an old wound seeking resolution. In the workplace, this confusion manifests in ways that often go unrecognized. Consider a team that's been working together for years under a manager who is charismatic but volatile. The team members never know if they'll receive praise or criticism, support or sabotage. The unpredictability creates a heightened state of alertness. Team members think about their manager constantly, try to anticipate their needs, and feel a rush of relief when they receive approval. When asked if they're happy at work, many will say they're loyal to their team, that they care deeply about the work. But analysis of their behavior suggests something different. They're not staying because of love for the work or genuine loyalty. They're staying because the anxiety-driven bond feels like connection. In personal relationships, the pattern becomes even more pronounced. Two people meet and feel an immediate, intense pull toward each other. The connection feels electric, consuming, unlike anything they've experienced before. They think about each other constantly. They feel incomplete when apart. Every text message sends a surge of dopamine through their system. They interpret this intensity as evidence of profound love, of having found the one. But psychology suggests that what they're experiencing might be attachment anxiety rather than love. The intensity comes not from depth of connection, but from the activation of old attachment wounds, the unconscious hope that this person will finally provide what's always been missing. There's also the pattern of fear-based bonds. Someone stays in a relationship not because it brings them joy or helps them grow, but because the thought of being alone feels unbearable. They've built their entire identity around being part of this partnership. Their friends are their partner's friends. Their routines are shared routines. Their sense of self is entangled with being someone's partner. The relationship itself might be unfulfilling, marked by frequent conflict or emotional distance, but the fear of losing the structure it provides keeps them locked in place. They call this commitment. They call it love. But often observed behavior suggests it's attachment to the identity and security the relationship provides, not love for the person themselves. Another common pattern involves the repetition of familiar dynamics. A woman whose father was critical and withholding finds herself drawn to partners who are emotionally unavailable. She works tirelessly to earn their affection, believing that if she can just be good enough, interesting enough, patient enough, they'll finally open up to her. The struggle feels meaningful. The rare moments of connection feel precious precisely because they're so hard-won. She interprets her persistence as love, as fighting for the relationship. But what's actually happening is the unconscious reenactment of childhood dynamics. Her brain recognizes the pattern and mistakes it for intimacy, because it's what intimacy has always looked like to her. So why does our brain make this mistake? Why confuse need with love, anxiety with passion, familiarity with genuine connection? The answer lies partly in how our neurochemistry works. Research indicates that both attachment and love activate similar neural pathways. Both trigger the release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. Both can create dopamine surges that feel like reward and pleasure. From a purely chemical standpoint, the brain doesn't always distinguish between a bond formed from fear and one formed from genuine affection. Cognitive biases also play a significant role. Confirmation bias leads us to interpret ambiguous information in ways that support what we already believe. If someone believes they're in love, they'll focus on evidence that supports that belief while dismissing or minimizing evidence to the contrary. The sunk cost fallacy keeps people invested in relationships simply because they've already invested so much time and energy. Walking away feels like admitting failure or wasting years of life. There's also the powerful influence of societal messaging. From childhood, people are taught that love is passionate, all-consuming, that it requires sacrifice and persistence. Movies, songs, and stories glorify relationships built on intensity and drama. The quiet, steady nature of secure love doesn't make for compelling entertainment, so it becomes underrepresented in our cultural narrative. People learn to expect love to feel like urgency, like need, like something that takes over your entire life. When they experience these feelings, even if they stem from anxiety or insecurity, they interpret them through the cultural framework they've been given. The brain's tendency toward narrative coherence also contributes to the confusion. Human beings are storytelling creatures. We create narratives about our lives that make sense to us, that feel consistent and meaningful. Once we've labeled a relationship as love, Our brain works to maintain that story even when evidence suggests otherwise. We explain away problems, rationalize concerning behavior, and convince ourselves that what we're experiencing is simply the normal challenges of a loving relationship. The consequences of this confusion extend far beyond simple misunderstanding. When people mistake attachment for love, they often stay in relationships that prevent their growth. They remain in partnerships that drain rather than energize them, that diminish rather than expand their sense of self. Years pass, and they look back wondering why they feel so diminished, why they've lost touch with interests and friendships and parts of themselves that once felt essential. In professional contexts, the confusion leads people to tolerate toxic work environments because they've formed strong attachments to colleagues, to the identity their job provides, or to the familiar patterns of their workplace. They sacrifice their mental health and personal time, believing they're demonstrating loyalty and commitment. But often observed behavior suggests they're simply enacting attachment patterns that have nothing to do with genuine passion for the work itself. The emotional toll is significant. Attachment-based relationships tend to generate constant anxiety. There's a perpetual undercurrent of fear about losing the connection, about not being enough, about the other person leaving. This anxiety masquerades as caring deeply, as loving intensely. But love, in its healthier forms, doesn't generate this kind of persistent dread. Secure love creates a sense of groundedness, not constant vigilance. Perhaps most significantly, when people are caught in attachment patterns they mistake for love, they miss opportunities for genuine connection. They invest their emotional energy in relationships that can never truly fulfill them, because those relationships are built on need rather than mutual appreciation. The possibility of experiencing real love remains theoretical, always just out of reach, because the person is already bound to something that looks like it but fundamentally isn't. So how does someone recognize the difference? What distinguishes attachment from love in practice? Research and observation suggest several key markers. Attachment often feels like need. It's characterized by thoughts like, "I can't live without this person," or "I don't know who I am without them." There's a quality of desperation beneath it, a sense that your well-being depends entirely on maintaining this connection. Decision-making becomes distorted by fear of loss. You stay not because you want to, but because the alternative feels impossible. Attachment increases anxiety and insecurity. You find yourself constantly monitoring the relationship, looking for signs of trouble, needing reassurance that everything is okay. There's a preoccupation with the other person's feelings and behaviors that goes beyond healthy consideration. Your mood becomes dependent on their mood. A withdrawn text response sends you spiraling. Their attention becomes the axis around which your emotional state revolves. Attachment is often based on what the other person provides or represents, rather than who they actually are. When you examine the connection closely, you might find that you love the way they make you feel about yourself, the social status they provide, the financial security they offer, or simply the fact that they want you. The actual person, with their real qualities and characteristics, remains somewhat peripheral to the bond. Love, by contrast, feels like choice. It's wanting someone in your life because of who they are, not because of what they fix in you. There's a sense of freedom within it. You're with this person because you genuinely appreciate them, not because you can't function without them. You could survive on your own. You simply prefer not to. Love promotes growth in both individuals. It creates space for each person to develop, to pursue interests, to maintain outside friendships and connections. There's support for individual identity alongside shared experience. Neither person loses themselves in the relationship. Instead, both become fuller versions of themselves. Love feels expansive rather than contracting. It generates energy rather than depleting it. After time with someone you love, you typically feel more alive, more yourself, more capable. After time with someone you're attached to but don't genuinely love, you often feel drained, confused, or somehow diminished. Consider two scenarios. In the first, a woman stays with her partner because when she imagines leaving, she feels a surge of panic. Who will she be without this relationship? How will she manage alone? Her friends have suggested the relationship doesn't seem fulfilling, but she explains that they don't understand how much she cares about him. Yet when asked what she loves about him specifically, her answers are vague or focus on history rather than present reality. This is attachment speaking. In the second scenario, a man is with someone who challenges him, who has her own full life and interests, who sometimes frustrates him with her differentness. But when he thinks about her, he feels warmth and appreciation. He admires specific qualities, her curiosity, her kindness to strangers, the way she thinks through problems. Their relationship requires effort and communication, but it doesn't require constant anxiety or self-abandonment. He's with her because he genuinely values who she is, not because he needs her to complete him. This more closely resembles love. Understanding this distinction doesn't come with a prescription for immediate action. Recognizing that what you've called love might actually be attachment doesn't mean you must leave every relationship tomorrow. Human connections are complex, and people grow and change. Sometimes attachment evolves into genuine love as both individuals develop greater security and self-awareness. What matters is bringing conscious awareness to these patterns. When you notice yourself clinging out of fear rather than choosing out of appreciation, that awareness itself creates possibility for change. When you recognize the difference between intensity and depth, you can begin asking different questions about your relationships. Self-reflection becomes essential. What am I actually feeling in this relationship? Does this connection expand my life or contract it? Am I staying because I genuinely value this person, or because I'm afraid of what leaving would mean? These aren't easy questions, and they don't have simple answers. But asking them is how people move from unconscious pattern repetition toward intentional relationship building. For some people, working with a therapist or counselor provides valuable support in untangling these patterns. Professional guidance isn't about being broken or damaged. It's simply about having an experienced perspective to help identify blind spots and work through deeply ingrained patterns. This isn't a prescription or recommendation, merely an acknowledgement that sometimes external perspective helps clarify what's difficult to see from inside our own experience. The confusion between attachment and love is deeply human. It emerges from our earliest experiences, from the way our brains are wired, from the stories our culture tells us about what relationships should be. There's no shame in having mistaken one for the other. What matters is developing the awareness to recognize the difference. Perhaps the most important insight is this: genuine love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It doesn't require constant anxiety or loss of identity. It doesn't feel like drowning. Real love, in whatever form it takes, whether romantic partnership, deep friendship, or familial bond, allows you to breathe more freely, not less. It invites you to become more fully yourself, not to disappear into someone else's needs or expectations. The relationships that transform us, that truly matter, are built on something sturdier than need or fear, or the desperate hope that another person will fix what's broken in us. They're built on mutual respect, genuine appreciation, and the kind of seeing that recognizes another person as fully human, separate from us, valuable in their own right. That's worth distinguishing from everything else. If this exploration resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. These conversations help us all understand ourselves and each other more clearly. And if you'd like to continue exploring human behavior and psychology, consider subscribing. There's more to discuss. Thank you for watching.